Dami namang saksakan niya.
Let me see my brother, this man cries. His aunt says she hasn't told his mother her other son is dead. Investigators are crawling over the site of the Air India Flight 171 crash and the medical college dorm the crashing plane hit.
It started as a normal flight, Air India Flight 171, a magnificent Boeing 787 Dreamliner, carrying 230 passengers and 12 crew members from Ahmedabad to London Gatwick. On board, families with children, students, and business travelers, all cozying up for the long journey ahead. But just seconds after takeoff, everything went wrong. At exactly 1:38 p.m., the plane lifted off from runway 23 in what appeared to be a standard takeoff, but barely 30 seconds later, disaster struck in the most horrendous way possible. The aircraft stopped climbing,
And that the plane seemed to come to a standstill in midair before crashing.
and it appeared as if the engines weren't delivering the power they needed. Over the radio, the co-pilot was panicking, yelling "Mayday" several times before everything just went quiet. What followed was pure horror, something you'd never want to see, hear, or read about. The plane went straight into the BJ Medical College hostel in Megani Nagar. A massive fireball lit up the sky as everyone on board perished, along with at least 38 people on the ground, including students and staff. And from the looks of it, it should have been total devastation. But somehow, one man miraculously survived. Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, seated in the infamous 11A, walked out of the wreckage. Yep, you heard that right. He actually came out of that apocalyptic crash alive. But here's the crazy part. Just moments before the impact, he claims to have gotten this strange feeling, almost as if time had frozen. And while his survival is nothing short of a miracle, why did the Dreamliner go down? Was it just bad luck, a bad inspection, or was there something else going on behind the scenes? And what if I told you the crash has already been solved? Strap in, folks.
Really, it is heartbreaking. You can see that there. You can see the timer counting down. And in 32 seconds, it's literally all over.
Because one of India's darkest aviation nightmares has suddenly found its answers. Quick disclaimer though, the truth will shock you. But before I reveal the shocking truth, let's revisit some key details. What was supposed to be a normal sunny day ended up being one of the darkest days in India's history. June 12, 2025, a couple of hours into the afternoon, and the entire world was watching Ahmedabad in horror. Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787
It's Air India
Dreamliner,
Flight
lifted off
171.
from Ahmedabad at exactly 1:38 p.m. It was headed for London Gatwick with a total of 242 people on board. And like I said
242
earlier,
people.
there were families, schools, and professionals out on business trips. Out of the 242 people, 169 of them were Indians, 53 Brits, 7 Portuguese, and 1 Canadian. But just 30 seconds after liftoff, something went terribly wrong. Despite the pilot's countless attempts, the aircraft just wouldn't gain altitude, and with the mayday call coming in through the radios, everyone knew what was about to happen next. It was almost like the end of the world as the aircraft tore through the BJ Medical College hostel in the Megani Nagar neighborhood. It consumed pretty much everything in its path, going straight through dormitories, student housing, and classrooms,
Oh my God.
exploding into a massive fireball. At least 38 people on the ground lost their lives, with most of them being students and medical staff who had no warning or chance to escape. And being on the plane is one thing, but just imagine being in your room and not knowing what's about to hit you. For those alive, the injuries were brutal. Many of the bodies were burned so badly that DNA
169
testing
Indians.
was the only way to identify them.
fingerprint. Second is dental characteristics because it can withstand the heat. And third is the DNA.
And yet from this horrible tragedy, one person walked out alive. His name?
169 Indians. Oh my god. Guys, it's about the plane crash before June 12, 2025. Air India Flight 171 crash. Plane crash. Only one survived, guys. So sad.
Kumar Ramesh, a 40-year-old British national, seated in 11A near the emergency exit. How in the world did he walk out of the crash alive? I mean, his hand was burned, clothes torn, face injured, but still, he was alive. And interesting is how he described a strange moment before the crash, almost as if the aircraft had frozen mid-air before everything just went up in flames.
The sole survivor from the plane says he was still alive after he opened his eyes.
The last thing he remembered was escaping through a broken door after the plane had gone down. Believe it or not, aviation experts still think Vishwas shouldn't have survived the crash. But at the same time, with more than 200 people gone, Indians and aviation coders from all over the world wanted answers. Within just hours of the crash, India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau launched a full-scale investigation. They were joined by experts from all over the world, including the US National Transportation Board, mainly because the Boeing 787 is an American-made aircraft. Along with them, Boeing engineers, GE Aerospace technicians, and aviation experts from all over the world flew in to uncover what happened to Flight 171. Also, when you think about it, this wasn't just Air India. It was about Boeing. And let me tell you, the stakes are incredibly high. We're talking about the 787, one of the most advanced aircraft on Earth. How did it go down just like that? Anyway, back to the story. Both black boxes were recovered surprisingly fast.
My god.
The flight data recorder
Only
was
one
found
survived.
on a rooftop in the ruins of the BJ Medical College. The cockpit voice recorder was also recovered shortly after. Together, these two devices held the last few moments of Flight 171. Every
Flight
critical
171.
detail, from engine performance, crew reactions, and cockpit warnings, everything on these boxes. But as the data started coming in, things went from 0 to 100 in no time. Was this a dual engine failure? Did both GE GEnx engines lose power just seconds after liftoff? I mean, let's not forget, eyewitnesses claim the plane never really climbed. It was almost as if it was drifting through the air, like something was dragging it down. And that's when experts got their hands on video YouTube that showed something extremely chilling: the deployment of the RAM air turbine. Let me make this simple for you. The RAT is a device that only appears when everything fails. And that begs the question, what could have caused two brand new engines to fail simultaneously? Or worse, was it error? Because some aviation experts are pointing to a potential flap misconfiguration as well. And let's not forget, the landing gear stayed extended as well, creating enormous drag. Did the pilots rush procedures? Did someone retract the flaps too soon? And I know what right now. Do these questions even matter? The damage has already been done. Well, the answer is yes. It all boils down to one simple thing. Could this crash have been avoided? And then came another theory, one that scared everyone. Was it an electrical failure? The Boeing 787 relies on a more electric system, replacing controls. If the system failed mid-takeoff, could it have triggered failures? What if it cut power to the engine or system? Was this a design flaw? Is Boeing to be blamed Also, why was this plane even allowed to take off in the first place if any of these systems were acting strangely beforehand?
Mm-hmm.
As the world waits for the black box data to be decoded, one thing is super clear. This wasn't a simple accident. No, sir. Something major and possibly preventable went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So, after a few days of intense investigations, the answer is finally out. And trust me, it's left everyone shocked. And for conspiracy theorists who think it was some sort of bomb, sabotage, or engine failure, that isn't the case. What's the real reason Air India Flight 171 fell from the sky? Are you ready for human error? It's true. The crash could have been avoided. It was a simple, devastating oversight in flight configuration that caused the crash. According to AAIB and their international partners, including both the NTSB and Boeing, the aircraft's landing gear was never retracted after takeoff.
Mm-hmm.
And want to hear something even worse? The flaps were mistakenly retracted too early. Mistakenly? To put that into perspective, flaps are essential for generating lift at slow speeds. Pilots basically created an air doing the two most unimaginable things together. Sprint while dragging bricks behind you. And that's not all.
Mm-hmm.
Mid-sprint, someone would come remove your shoes. How hard would that be? That's exactly what happened to Flight 171. The flight data recorder can with the utmost clarity. After the 787's smooth brake release and acceleration down the runway, the aircraft lifted off exactly as expected, and everything, including the thrust and engines, were normal.
Mm-hmm.
But once airborne, the drag from the extended landing gear slowed the climb. And then someone made the fatal mistake of retracting the flaps too early. 30 seconds. That's all it took for the plane and take more than 200 lives. Want to hear something even more chilling? The cockpit voice recorder captured all the alarms. The plane was telling them exactly what was wrong, but the flight crew just couldn't understand. Now, experts who reviewed the data claim the pilots recognized the issue, but with so little attitude and time, it was already too late.
Mm-hmm.
So the plane didn't actually fall because of a mechanical or electrical failure. It fell because it literally couldn't fly anymore.
Mm-hmm.
This is a $200 million aircraft we're talking about. It's one of the most advanced passenger jets in history. And just like that, it was brought down by one simple but deadly error. Aviation experts around the world are still weighing in, with former pilots describing the flap retraction with gears still extended
Everyone
as a
survived
critical
this.
mismatch. I think what they mean to say is that it's one of the dumbest mistakes a pilot ever make. But how could something like this even happen? How could pilots on a routine international flight make such a basic mistake? The AAIB's preliminary report pointed to deeper problems, like how protocols weren't followed, checklists weren't completed, and warnings were missed or potentially ignored. And now, for the haunting truth, it was all preventable. 241 people didn't have to lose their lives. Had the pilots delayed retracting the flaps until after the landing gear was up, the plane probably would have climbed normally, even if everything else had stayed the same. And you know what makes it all so much more devastating? Not just the loss of life, not even the horror of the crash site. It's the knowledge that all this didn't have to happen. It wasn't even a failure of tech or systems. It was a failure.
That's it, guys. The only one survived in this plane crash, the Air India Flight 171. He was seated near the exit, number 11. So sad, guys. So, it's It's not a human error, so what it?
AAIB report is due soon, and when it arrives, it will likely confirm what's already clear. This wasn't just a crash. This was an incident that points out a grave and growing problem in the aviation industry and how pilots and people in charge still cut corners despite being responsible for hundreds
It's a
of
tragedy,
lives.
guys.
So, yeah, the crash of Air India Flight 171 sent shockwaves far beyond Indian borders. And like I just said, it's not what happened, it's about how it happened that's left the world shocked. This was a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, a technological beast, a jet design with cutting-edge safety systems and sophisticated monitoring, not a worn-out relic or some regional plane. And yet, it still fell from the sky due to one of the oldest mistakes in aviation history, fatal mismanagement of flaps and landing gear. Aviation professionals are still struggling to believe how something so basic could bring down such an advanced aircraft. And this might not be the right time to say this, but someone has to. Gear retracted before flaps down. It's Flight School 101. Was it pressure, fatigue, a communication breakdown? No one can answer with certainty yet, but the realization that the most advanced jets in the world can be defeated by human hands is alarming for the entire industry. And it's been a tough couple of days for Boeing and GE Aerospace, as well as their shares dropped sharply. While neither company was directly at fault, the psychological hit to their reputation has been unavoidable. On the other hand, Indian regulators ordered fleet-wide inspections of all 787 Dreamliners with Genx engines, somehow eager to get the tag of human error off this crash. Air India, owned by the Tata Group and in the middle of a massive rebranding campaign, has now found itself facing an absolute storm. The public, both in India and around the world, is demanding to know how a routine takeoff could spiral into a catastrophe in just 30 seconds. But aviation experts are sticking to their verdict. This isn't about hardware, Boeing, or GE Aerospace. This is about humans. And here's another uncomfortable truth. No amount of modern engineering can fully eliminate human error. Either way, the human aftermath of Flight 171 was raw, brutal, and unbearable. Entire families wiped out, newlywed students and grandparents gone. Among the dead were young medical students from Gujarat, future doctors who never got a chance to save another life. Some were professionals bound for new jobs in the UK. Whoever they were, they all left behind an incomplete story. First responders had it tough, as well as identifying the bodies was agonizing. Many passengers were burned beyond recognition. And then there's Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, the lone survivor, the miracle. He came out burned, bruised, and broken. And check this out. How could he or his family be happy? He survived. But his brother, sitting right beside him, couldn't make it. Air India has set up a grief counseling center, compensation funds, and family support hotlines. But we all know no amount of money can make sense of the senseless. And grieving families don't exactly want money or sympathy. They want answers. They want to know why the checklists failed. Why weren't the alarms enough? And why in 2025, human errors are still crashing airplanes. For them, the story of Flight 171 will never be over. Anyway, that's it from my side, folks. So, what do you think? Was this tragedy purely a human error or a deeper system failure? Is aviation really as safe as we're told? And could better cockpit technology have played a role in saving more lives? Let me know in the comments below.
Okay, guys. So It's really only one survived. Only one from India. It's really sad for them. 241 lives. It's really sad for their families. What will
Aboard
happen?
Flight 171 have died following the crash in the western Indian state of Gujarat. The plane bound for London Gatwick crashed this morning shortly after takeoff in the city of Ahmedabad, hitting a hostel for trainee doctors. Of those on board the Boeing Dreamliner 787, 53 were British nationals. Miraculously, one passenger, a British man, has survived and was able to walk away. We'll hear from his family tonight. The flight took off at 1:40 p.m. local time on a 10-hour flight to Gatwick. It was only 600 feet or so in the air when it came down less than a minute later. The number of victims on the ground is still unknown. What caused it to crash is still unclear. We'll piece together what we know. And tonight we'll hear from our correspondent Yogita Limai, who's at the scene of the crash, and Samira Hussain at the local hospital. First, let's join Yogita at the site of the crash. Rita, an acrid smell of burning rubber, wood, plastic hangs thick in the air here at the crash site. The buildings that you can see behind me completely charred, and there's a row of those leading right up to the place where the aircraft actually crashed. It's been cordoned off now, but we were there earlier, and literally we were walking through charred pieces of metal along the way. We saw bodies that were being pulled out, parts of rubble that were still smoking, parts of rubble that were still on fire. And we still don't know how many people who were in this densely residential area, populated area, were killed in that crash. But here is how events unfolded today. It was meant to be a 9-hour journey, a plane carrying hundreds of passengers, hundreds of dreams. But just after takeoff, must have been terrifying moments for those on board. This flight made a frantic mayday call. But when air traffic control responded, silence, followed by a deafening explosion. All of it caught on camera. The plane crashed just outside the airport complex, on buildings used as accommodation by medical students at a government college and hospital. Firefighters and emergency responders were rushed in, tackling the blaze caused by a plane tank full of fuel, not an easy task. Many locals ran in to help. We met one of them later in the day. Ravi Vacheta described what he saw.
I heard a loud explosion. Then I went to the spot and saw smoke billowing out. We went in with the emergency response team and helped to pull the bodies out. Everything was charred. It was very difficult and the heat coming from it was intense.
Several hours after the crash, the wreckage was still smoking. Working into the night, rescuers pulled out more dead. You can see there's a tree that has been upturned and is still smoking here, and behind me literally everything is charred. It's actually quite hard to even talk because the air is still smelling very acrid. It's still full of smoke, and I'm just going to try to walk around and show you the scale of the destruction there behind me. That's where the plane crashed, but literally there's a row of buildings, about I've counted 5 or 6 of them that have been completely charred. So the scale of devastation on the ground as well, where the crash occurred, the residential area where the crash occurred is just massive. It's still unclear how many residents have died, but Air India has said all passengers were killed except one person. This British national who was on board the aircraft miraculously walked out alive. He's being treated in hospital. He's one of more than 50 British nationals who were on board the plane that was also carrying more than 160 Indians and Canadian and Portuguese nationals. For families who had just seen their loved ones off at the airport, a gut-wrenching time. My brother was on the plane, one man cries.
My sister-in-law was going to London. Within an hour, I got news the plane had crashed. I had left for Ahmedabad, then I came back.
Yeah,
We
watching
don't know
news.
anything. We've not been able to enter the hospital.
First, we were forced to roam on the streets for an hour and a half. They kept saying, "Stay here, don't stay here. We have come to see our relatives, not to be sent around in circles."
Only 3 years ago, Air India became a private airline from being India's national carrier, bought by an Indian business giant, the Tata Group. At a time when it was trying to revamp its image to that of a polished, reliable airline, this is a major trial for its leadership.
We are actively working with the authorities on all emergency response efforts. A special team of caregivers from Air India is on their way to Ahmedabad to provide additional support. Investigations will take time, but anything we can do now, we are doing.
The last deadly incident of this scale in India was also of an Air India plane, which crashed in the southern city of Kozhikode 5 years ago. For the carrier, there will be difficult questions to answer. Yogita Lamai, BBC News, Ahmedabad. This is Vishwash Kumar Ramesh. He's the sole survivor of the crash, and he's a 40-year-old businessman from Leicester. And this is where he was sitting in seat 11A near the front of the plane ahead of the wings. Vishwash is now being treated in hospital, but his brother Ajay was also on the plane, and Air India says there were no other survivors. Their family lives in Leicester. Our correspondent Navtesh Johal has been talking to them.
The man believed to be the sole survivor, Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, miraculously appears to walk away from where so many have perished today. He was on the flight from Ahmedabad to London with his brother Ajay. This is him in hospital, where he's now being treated. His remarkable escape has seen him visited in his bed by the Indian Minister of Home Affairs. Back at his family home in Leicester, there was relief from one of his brothers upon seeing those images, but concern remains about Ajay.
Yeah, obviously it feels great seeing him doing well. Fine, I guess. He's just more worried about the other brother. That's all.
Tell me a little bit about your brothers.
I could just go on and on, I guess, all day.
Yes, yes.
There's no words to describe them, to be honest.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yeah, we were all in
Vivek.
shock as soon as we heard what happened.
It's
Just
afternoon here
utter
in
shock,
the
that's all.
UAE. Thank you for
Speechless.
watching.
Vishwash has a wife and a young son.
Yes,
He was
Paul.
born in India but has lived in the UK for more than 20 years. This boarding pass shows that he was sat in seat 11A. It was a window seat located in the front half of the plane.
Only one
The family
survived,
says Ajay
guys.
was sat next to him. Vishwash told his family he heard a blast from the aircraft.
Air India
What has
Boeing
Vishwash told you about
787,
what happened to him so
that's
far?
it.
Honestly, he himself has no idea, like, how he survived, how he got out of the plane. Well, when he called us, he was just more worried about my other brother, like, just find Ajay, find Ajay. That's all he cares about at the moment.
That's his concern. That's all he wants, is to find your
He
brother.
doesn't care about himself.
The family has been overwhelmed by support from relatives, neighbours and the wider community, but they all fear the worst for Ajay.
Everyone is upset.
Ajay, how are you doing? This is your cousin who, one of
I'm
whom
absolutely upset. Just not my cousin, he's also like one of my best friends as well. So I'm feeling upset.
If I get distracted mid-sentence, I can pause, but
Oh no.
Live?
Mm-hmm.
Leave it live.
Only one survived in Air India, guys. So it's a tragedy, actually.
Feeling upset.
The scenes outside this house in Leicester reflect a community in shock and grief. This city is home to thousands of people with links to the state of Gujarat. Here, this tragedy feels close to home. Navtej Johal, BBC News, Leicester.
Well, we're learning more tonight about the people who died in the crash. Among the 52 British people who lost their lives are Javid and Mariam Saeed from London, who died alongside their 2 young children. And Akil Nanabawa and Hannah Varaji and their daughter Sarah from Gloucester. Prayers have been held tonight for some of the victims. Seema Katecha reports.
Hindu prayers for the dead and the families who will never see their loved ones again. Several members of this congregation knew someone on that fatal flight.
It's a really big loss for us, and we all know the person. I'm from Gujarat, and Ahmedabad is just nearby. Really painful. We pray today.
There are hundreds of thousands of people of Gujarati heritage in the UK, and this flight was coming from Gujarat. But what the worshippers here have made clear is that this prayer is not just for one community, it is for all the communities affected by this crash. The former Chief Minister of Gujarat, Vijay Rupani, was a close friend of the priest here and is believed to have been on the plane.
He gave us encouragement, always support to the Gujarati community. It's very sad news. In one family, you lost one person, but the entire community, you lost so many people. How you can cope? And that's the reason we kept the prayers here.
We are in the airport, just boarding. Goodbye, India.
Others in their prayers, a married couple, Jamie and Fingal Greenlaw Meek, who run a wellness and spiritual retreat in London. This was their last Instagram post before their flight. Also, Javid Ali Sayed and Mariam Javid Ali Sayed. They were killed along with their 2 children. They lived in West London. Mariam had a job at Harrods and Javid worked at a West London hotel. And Akil Nanabava and Hannah Varaji also died alongside their 4-year-old daughter, Sarah, who's been described as a ray of sunshine. Tonight, a sense of shared grief hangs heavily here as people remember those so tragically lost 4,000 miles away. Seema Katecha, BBC News.
The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, spoke in Downing Street this evening about the crash and its impact on people here.
Well, the images and news from India is absolutely devastating, and I speak for the entire country in saying our thoughts are with each and every one of those involved. To all the British and Indian families across the land who are absolutely impacted by this, and our thoughts first and foremost are with them. Obviously the investigation is going on. We've dispatched an investigation team that's been deployed. The Foreign Secretary is leading on this, and we'll obviously update as soon as we can.
At least 50 injured medical students are being treated in hospital after the plane crashed into a doctor's hostel in the city. Others were injured at the scene where the plane came down. The bodies of the dead were taken to the civil hospital in Ahmedabad, from where we can join Samira Hussain now. Samira.
Rita, after the horror of the day, it is the grim reckoning of the night. Things are pretty quiet here at the hospital as reality sets in. This is no longer a search for survivors, but the painstaking task of identifying the dead. The rush to save survivors, the force of the crash, and the explosion that followed. Most didn't stand a chance. Sonal Ben's aunt and uncle were visiting from London.
We dropped her off, and in just a few minutes we got the message to come to civil hospital.
Tulsi Bhai Bill saw the flames and ran towards the crash site.
We pulled out 2-3 bodies. We ourselves got very scared. When I was pulling out one of the bodies, a hand came into my hand. We rushed the bodies to the hospital.
Several hours after the crash, people still searching for news, but the rescue operation
now officially over. Everyone on that plane has died save for just one person. And so now the arduous task of identifying the bodies has begun. So family members have all assembled here and they're coming to give DNA samples. Because the bodies are so disfigured, the only way to be able to match people is by testing their DNA.
Yeah, DNA test.
India's Home Minister says the true number of dead will take time.
We will give the official death toll after the DNA is taken
Amit Shah,
and their identities have been
Indian
confirmed
Minister
by
of
the
Home
authorities.
Affairs.
But even when all the dead have been accounted for, the grieving for them will only have just begun. Terrible scenes there at the hospital, but establishing the number of people who've died and exactly what happened is going to take time, isn't it? Absolutely. What the hospital officials are saying here that it could take 72 hours for that DNA testing to be complete. So family members are just left waiting to hear. And of course, it's not just the people that were in the plane, that were on that plane, but then there were also the people that were at the college that also need to be identified. This is just a grueling time, and I just want to sort of set the scene here. You know, this is the main hospital where many of the bodies were brought, and earlier today it was quite a scene. There were so many people that were coming, and it wasn't just family members and friends, but it was just people in the community. You have to understand that this is just such a horrific crash, and so many people were just overcome with grief that they wanted to be here to offer their support. People have been distributing water to people. They've been offering food. One man who operates a tea stall decided to close it down and just give out biscuits to all the people that have been working here. It's a time where the community here is really trying to come together as officials are trying to figure out exactly what happened. Samira, thank you. Samira Hussain reporting there. Well, details of the plane's last moments and footage from the crash site are still emerging. BBC Verify's Merlin Thomas has been looking at what might have caused the crash.
The plane, a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner, takes off from Ahmedabad Airport at 13:38 local time, bound for London Gatwick. Tracking website Flightradar24 shows the last location of flight tracking data at 625 feet altitude here. We showed experts the footage who say that the plane appears to be pitching up to try to gain altitude. And you can see its landing gear is down.
Welcome to Times by...
Oh, landing gear is done. More than 240 people, guys, are known to have been killed when Air India passenger plane crashed. Seconds after takeoff from Ahmedabad in Gujarat, Western India. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner came down in a densely populated area of the city shortly after clearing the runway, causing devastation and many deaths on the ground. All but one of the 242 people on board the flight are confirmed to have died, guys, including 169 Indian nationals and 52 Britons. The sole survivor of Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, who is British, was sitting in seat 11A on the London-bound flight. He managed to escape from the aircraft and is being treated in hospital. Good for him. Okay. The plane crashed into a building housing medical students, and people are confirmed to have been killed on the ground. Rescue workers are continuing to search the scene of the disaster. Rita Chakrabarti presents BBC News at 10, reporting by Yogita Limaye, Navtej Johal Sima Kotecha, Samir Hussain, Merlin Thomas, and Nick Marsh, guys. So I'm watching for BBC News, guys. So I'm so sad for what's happened to them. It's a tragedy, guys. Too many lives, too many dreams have gone. The families are all sad and upset. So they're praying, the communities were praying for them. Thank you guys for watching with me and listening with me for this news.
When normally it would be retracted within 10 to 15 seconds of flight. The crash site and its aftermath is just over 1.5 kilometers from the end of the runway. The tail of the plane is lodged in a building here. It's part of the BJ Medical College. It's on the site of a hospital complex. At least 50 medical students have been taken to hospital. We know where this is because we've matched these buildings and aftermath to publicly available photos from the scene. The Dreamliner 7878 has been in operation with Air India since 2014. So what could be the possible cause?
For some reason, enough lift wasn't being generated to keep the aircraft climbing. That's usually associated with not enough thrust for some reason or another, but more than stating that would be to get into the realms of speculation.
Some experts told BBC Verify the plane's wing flaps didn't appear to be extended, which could be a factor which led to the crash. Others say the video quality makes it too hard to tell.
The investigators will certainly look at the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder to determine if those flaps and slats were not extended or whether they were, if it appeared to be an airplane issue or if it was a pilot issue and failure to set the flaps and slats where they should have.
Now, investigators will hope to find the black box amongst the wreckage to piece together what happened. Merlin Thomas, BBC News.
This is the first fatal accident involving a Boeing 787 passenger jet known as the Dreamliner. Nick Marsh, our transport correspondent, is here with me. And Nick, what sort of record does this type of aircraft have? What has Boeing said?
Well, until today, Rita, a very good record. The 787 Dreamliner is a mainstay, really, of this kind of intercontinental travel. I mean, it was only last month that Boeing was celebrating its billionth passenger on this type of aircraft. You know, it just shows you, how popular and, how reliable it's been until now. The issue is that when you have news like this, you hear the word Boeing, you hear crash, you think of those fatal incidents in places like Indonesia, Ethiopia, where hundreds of people died. Now, that was Boeing's fault. That was faulty software, which was an issue, and that's what caused those planes to go down. Today is different. Firstly, because those incidents involved a different model, the 737 MAX. This is the 787, completely different. Secondly, and very importantly, as we've been hearing there in Merlin's report, we don't know what caused this crash. There's no suggestion at all that Boeing, the manufacturer, really is to blame at all. But in any case, it's Boeing again. Its name's being associated with bad news. They've been losing so much money recently, and this is going to be another challenge for the company.
Okay, thank you very much. Nick Marsh there. Let's get a final word with our correspondent Yogita Limai, who's in Ahmedabad. And Yogita, this is an accident with catastrophic consequences. What will happen in the next hours and days?
Well, for the next few hours, for the next few days, I think we're going to see the operation continue here. And I'm going to show you why again, just to try to give you a sense of the scale. So those burnt out buildings behind me, those are at least 500 meters from the crash site, because this plane, which had a full fuel tank, crashed. The flames that came in engulfed all of this. There are earth movers here on standby. The actual crash site is down this road. There are barricades here. We can't go further at the moment, but earlier today we were able to get there, and it's basically this whole row of buildings which were set ablaze, which are completely charred. So this operation is going to take some time. There are expectations here that Prime Minister Narendra Modi might be visiting, although we don't have confirmation of that yet. This is his home state of Gujarat. But the biggest and most difficult questions, of course, for Air India. It's announced compensation for the victims, roughly £86,000 for the family of each person who was killed. But difficult questions about what happened on that aeroplane. And for a company that was trying to revamp its image, that was trying to say it's a modern, new, sleek Air India, it was privatized 3 years ago. After being India's national carrier, what's happened today, is going to come as a deadly, crushing blow.
Thank you. Yogita Limai there, reporting from Ahmedabad.
Welcome to Dubai Islands. Dubai.
Oh, that's it for today, guys. So just check out and hear the news from Air India plane crash. It's really sad for them. Okay, thank you guys for watching and listening with me. Good afternoon and thank you so much. Bye.